Tonight, everything fell into place. For months, I had been grasping at shadows, chasing whispers, doubting my own instincts. I told myself it was nothing. The late-night phone calls she ended too quickly, the extra time spent at the gym when she never broke a sweat, the way she had started locking her phone when she never used to care. It was all explainable, all harmless. Until it wasn't. Sophia cheated on me. And not just with anyone. With him. The neighbor. The man who had moved in 6 months ago with his perfect smile, his effortless charm, and the kind of confidence that turned heads without trying. I should have seen it coming. Maybe I did. In the way you see a car accident about to happen, but don't look away in time. Maybe I had let myself believe that my wife, the woman I had built a life with, wouldn't betray me like this. But she had. And now, I knew. It wasn't a hunch anymore. It wasn't paranoia. I had proof. And the game was about to change. I don't know how long I stood there in the dark, staring through the half-drawn curtains of our bedroom window. My pulse was steady, too steady for a man who had just confirmed his worst fear. Maybe that was the strangest part of all. I expected rage. A violent, all-consuming storm of anger that would send me straight to our bedroom, demanding answers, throwing accusations like daggers. But all I felt was stillness. Like the calm before something inevitable. Sophia was inside, wrapped in the same silk robe I had bought her last Christmas. She always said it made her feel elegant. But elegance was the last thing on my mind as I watched her, bathed in the soft glow of our bedside lamp, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She was texting someone. I didn't have to see the screen to know who it was. Him. I exhaled slowly, forcing the air out through my nose. I could almost hear my own heartbeat, the sound too even, too measured. If I closed my eyes, I could picture the way she looked at him. The way she smiled when she thought no one was watching. The same way she used to smile at me. My grip tightened around my phone, the images I had gathered over the past few weeks still glowing on the screen. The late-night texts, the gym parking lot where she never stepped inside, the blurred but unmistakable reflection of her in his car window. It wasn't enough to confront her yet. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I turned away from the window, my breath misting in the cold night air. My hands flexed at my sides as I forced myself to walk back into the house. Each step felt heavier than the last. She didn't hear me come in. She was still lying on her side of the bed, back turned to the door, her phone illuminating her face as she tapped out a message. She had no idea I had been outside watching her. That I knew. I stepped closer, quiet as a ghost. Long night? She flinched, just barely, but I caught it. She turned her head, her smile forming a fraction of a second too late. Oh, you scared me. I didn't move. Did I? She locked her phone without looking, flipping it over as if it had never been important. Yeah, I guess I was lost in thought. Lost in him, I thought. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the mattress dip beneath my weight. Her scent, vanilla and something floral, lingered in the air between us. I used to love that smell. She reached for my hand, her fingers warm against mine. You're home late. I studied her, searching for a flicker of guilt, a hint of remorse. There was none. She was good at this. Too good. Yeah, I said. Got caught up with work. She hummed, shifting closer, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. It was automatic, a habit rather than affection, a script she had been following for months. I felt my stomach tighten. I missed you, she murmured. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second, forcing down the bitter laugh, threatening to escape. No, you didn't. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Instead, I kissed her forehead, my lips barely brushing her skin. Me too. The words tasted like poison. Morning arrived, but it felt different. The sun poured through the blinds, painting golden lines across the bed, across her skin, across the illusion of the life we had built. Sophia stirred beside me, her breath slow and steady, tangled in the sheets as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Because I knew. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between her breaths. A part of me wanted to shake her awake, to force her to look me in the eye and confess. But another part of me, the part that had spent months doubting, questioning, second-guessing, wanted to wait, to watch. I needed to know how far she'd take this. I turned onto my side, watching her. She looked peaceful, innocent, even. I used to believe that look. Used to wake up beside her and think I was the luckiest man in the world. But now? Now I wasn't sure who I was looking at. Her phone buzzed from the nightstand. She didn't move. Another buzz. And another. I shifted, reaching across her to grab it, but before my fingers could close around it, her hand shot out, fast and precise. She clutched the phone to her chest, blinking awake, her lips parting slightly. I saw the panic flash in her eyes before she masked it with a lazy smile. "Morning," she murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Morning," I replied. She stretched, arching her back, and I might have believed the act if I hadn't seen the way her knuckles turned white around that phone. I forced a yawn, rolling onto my back. "Who's blowing up your phone this early?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "Just work stuff," she said, too casually. "Emails, probably." Liar. She slid out of bed, taking the phone with her. "I'm gonna shower," she announced, already walking away. I watched as she disappeared into the bathroom, the door clicking shut behind her. The water started running almost immediately, but I wasn't fooled. I knew that sound. The white noise of guilt, of secrecy. She was calling him. I sat up, rubbing my hands over my face, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me. How long had I been pretending not to see it? How long had I been swallowing the unease, dismissing the late nights and the guarded smiles? Too long, but not anymore. I climbed out of bed and moved to the window, pushing the curtain aside just enough to see across the street. His car was parked in the driveway. My stomach clenched. 6 months ago, when he moved in, I had been the first to welcome him. I had shaken his hand, invited him over for beers, told him if he ever needed anything, we were right next door. I had been friendly. I had been kind. And he had looked me in the eye and smiled like he wasn't planning to screw my wife. I let the curtain fall back into place, my jaw tightening. Fine. If they wanted to play games, I'd play too. But I wasn't going to lose. The day passed like a dream I wasn't a part of. I went through the motions, ate breakfast, kissed Sophia goodbye as she left for work, responded to emails, but all of it felt distant, mechanical. My mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker. I spent hours replaying the past few months in my head, piecing together the moments I had ignored. The way she had started turning away when she changed. The sudden obsession with perfume she never used to wear. The way she had once been affectionate, playful, always reaching for me, until she wasn't. The lies had been piling up for a while. I had just been too blind to see them. Not anymore. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. Not just for myself, but because I knew Sophia. She was smart. If I confronted her too soon, she'd twist it, make me feel like I was imagining things. I couldn't give her that chance. So I set my plan in motion. That afternoon, I drove to a small electronics store across town. A place where people didn't ask questions. I need a GPS tracker, I told the guy behind the counter. He barely blinked. For a car. I nodded. He reached under the counter and placed a small, discreet device in front of me. Magnetized. Tracks in real time. Battery lasts 2 weeks. I paid in cash. By the time I got home, Sophia's car was already in the driveway. I knew she had come home for lunch, something she never used to do before. I parked down the street and watched through the window as she moved around the kitchen, her phone never leaving her hand. Then I saw it. She was texting and smiling. Not the polite, absent-minded smile she gave me these days. This was different. This was real. My chest burned. Before I could talk myself out of it, I grabbed the tracker and stepped out of the car. I moved fast, crouching beside her car like I was checking a tire. The device snapped into place underneath her bumper with a soft click. Done. I walked inside like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," she said, leaning against the counter, her expression easy. "You're home early." I forced a smile. "Yeah, thought I'd surprise you." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. She hadn't expected me. She hadn't wanted me here. She slid her phone into her back pocket. "Well, I was just heading back to work." I stepped closer, caging her in with my body. "You sure?" I could use a break. Maybe we take the rest of the afternoon off, go somewhere. Just us. For a moment, just a flicker of a moment, I saw something in her face. Guilt. Fear. Then she recovered, smiling up at me like I was the love of her life. You know I'd love to, but I have a big meeting. Maybe this weekend? I kissed her forehead, lingering just long enough to feel the tension in her body. Of course, I murmured. Then I let her go. She practically bolted. I waited until her car disappeared down the street before pulling out my phone and opening the tracking app. A small, blinking dot appeared on the screen. Let's see where you really go, Sophia. The dot on my screen moved steadily down the highway. I sat in my car, watching it, my fingers tight around the steering wheel. This was it. For months, I had ignored the feeling that something was wrong. Now, I was finally watching the lie unfold in real time. Sophia hadn't driven to work. She had taken a different route, one that didn't lead downtown. No office buildings, no client meetings. Just an ordinary road cutting through the suburbs, leading nowhere she had any reason to be. And I followed. I kept my distance, my car blending in with the midday traffic. The whole time, my heart pounded in my chest. Not from nerves, not from fear, but from the certainty that I was about to confirm what I already knew. She made a turn into a quiet, upscale neighborhood. My grip on the wheel tightened. His neighborhood. I pulled over a few houses down, killing the engine. From where I sat, I could see her car parked neatly in his driveway, looking comfortable there. Like she belonged. My hands clenched into fists. I forced myself to wait. To watch. She didn't get out right away. She sat there for a few minutes, probably texting him, telling him she had arrived. Then, slowly, she stepped out of the car, smoothing her skirt, adjusting her hair in the side mirror. Like she was preparing herself for him. I felt something inside me snap. I watched as she walked to his front door, not hesitantly, not cautiously, but with certainty, with familiarity. She knocked once. The door opened, and there he was. Tall, smug, shirt unbuttoned just enough to be casual. He smiled at her, and she smiled back, stepping inside without a second thought. The door clicked shut behind them. I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The world outside the car seemed distant, muted, like I was watching a scene in a movie instead of my own life falling apart. I should have stormed up to that door, should have dragged her out and made her say it to my face. But I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a picture. A single, undeniable moment of truth. Sophia, at his house, in the middle of the day. No lies could erase that. No excuses could twist it. She was caught. And now? Now the game was mine to play. I stared at the photo on my phone, the proof of Sophia's betrayal frozen in time. It was strange how something so simple, a single picture, could rewrite everything I thought I knew. But I didn't feel rage. Not yet. I felt something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to storm in there like some fool driven by emotion. No, that's what she would expect. That's what people like her relied on. Outbursts, confrontation, scenes. They used them to twist the truth, to play the victim, to paint me as the irrational one. But I wasn't irrational. I was patient. I stayed parked a few houses down, gripping my phone, watching the minutes tick by. 15 minutes. 30. An hour. She was still inside. You don't stay in a man's house that long if you're just friends. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think. I had the picture, but I needed more. A single image was damning, but not undeniable. I wanted her to explain herself. I wanted her to lie to me, to look me in the eye and fabricate a story so I could watch it crumble beneath her own words. So I waited. And finally, 2 hours later, she emerged. I watched as the door opened and he walked her out. He leaned casually against the frame, his body language relaxed, too comfortable. She laughed at something he said, a sound so soft, so familiar, that it sent ice through my veins. She didn't look like a woman who felt guilty. She looked like a woman who had done this many times before. Then, the final blow. He reached for her, his hand grazing her waist, his fingers barely touching her hip, like a reflex. Like it was normal. She didn't pull away. She leaned in. Not a kiss. Not something so blatant. But it was enough. I snapped another picture, my hand steady. Now it was undeniable. I watched as she got into her car, adjusting her mirror, fixing her hair as if nothing had happened. Then she backed out of the driveway and headed home, back to me. I waited until she was gone before I finally started my car. I could have followed her, could have beaten her there, sat on the couch, and watched her scramble to explain herself when she walked through the door. But I didn't. I wasn't going home. Not yet. Because I had just decided how this would end. And Sophia? She had no idea what was coming. By the time I got home, Sophia was already there, standing in the kitchen like she had spent the whole day doing exactly what she had told me she would. She smiled at me when I walked in. That same smile. The one I had loved for years. The one I thought was mine. "Hey, babe," she said, leaning against the counter, stirring a cup of tea like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't just inside another man's house a little over an hour ago. I stepped forward, my body relaxed, my face unreadable. "Hey." She studied me for a second, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "How was your day?" The audacity of the question nearly made me laugh. I could feel the weight of my phone in my pocket, the pictures, the evidence right there, ready to be thrown in her face. But I held back. Not yet. Instead, I stepped into her game. I shrugged. The usual. Work, emails, same old stuff. "You." I watched her carefully. She didn't hesitate. She didn't hesitate. "Oh, she said easily, taking a slow sip of her tea. "Meetings, reports, catching up with clients. Exhausting." I almost smiled. Almost. She had no idea she was digging her own grave with every word. I nodded. "Sounds like a long day." She sighed dramatically, rubbing her neck. It really was. I let a pause stretch between us before I tilted my head slightly. "You sure that's all you did today?" For a flicker of a second, so fast I almost missed it, I saw it. A hesitation. The smallest, quickest falter in her expression. But then she covered it up just as fast, her smile never slipping. "Yeah, of course." "Why?" I shrugged again, my face blank. "Just curious." She laughed lightly, shaking her head. "You're weird sometimes." I smiled back. "Not as weird as you're going to think I am when I finally end this." Part 8. Setting the final trap. That night, I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling while she scrolled through her phone. I knew who she was texting. I knew whose name was lighting up her screen. I turned my head slightly, watching the way her fingers moved over the glass, the way she smiled at whatever he was saying. She thought I was asleep. She had no idea I was watching. I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly, keeping my breathing even. Tomorrow, I would end this. But not the way she expected. Because Sophia had underestimated me. She thought I was weak, passive, that I would let this slide or that I'd lose control, fly into a jealous rage, and let her control the narrative. No, I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to break her quietly, methodically. She was going to wake up thinking it was just another day. And by the time the sun set, she would realize that her perfect little lie had shattered around her. And there would be no way out. Sophia had no idea today would be the last normal morning of her carefully constructed lie. I woke up before her, watching as she slept beside me, her breathing soft and steady. The woman I had loved for years, the woman who promised me forever, was completely at peace because she thought she had one. She had no idea I had seen everything. No idea I knew. And that's what made this so satisfying. I slipped out of bed, moving quietly as I grabbed my phone. I had spent the night preparing for this, laying down every piece of the trap. There would be no screaming, no chaotic confrontation. There would just be truth. Undeniable. Unforgiving. I made coffee, showered, dressed like it was just another day. When Sophia finally stirred, stretching lazily before rolling over, she smiled at me like she always did. Like she hadn't been in another man's bed just yesterday. "Morning," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. I sipped my coffee, leaning against the counter, watching her carefully. "Morning." She didn't notice the change in my tone. She had become too comfortable in her deception. I set my cup down. "I was thinking we should go out tonight. Maybe a nice dinner? It's been a while." Her face lit up just enough to be convincing. "That sounds amazing." Perfect. I wanted her dressed up. I wanted her sitting across from me, pretending everything was fine. Because tonight, she wouldn't be the only one at dinner. The restaurant was upscale, dimly lit with the quiet hum of conversation and soft jazz playing in the background. Sophia was glowing in her black dress, her hair perfectly styled, her smile effortless. She really thought she had me fooled. We ordered wine. She twirled the stem of her glass between her fingers, completely relaxed, completely unaware of what was coming. I let her talk. Let her tell me about her day, about some made-up drama at work. I watched her closely, memorizing the way she lied so easily, so gracefully. I let the silence stretch between us before I leaned forward slightly. You love me, right? I asked, my voice quiet. Her smile faltered, just for a second, just enough for me to notice. Of course, she said quickly. Why would you even ask that? I tilted my head. I just want to hear you say it. She reached for my hand across the table, her fingers warm, reassuring. I love you, Ethan. You're my whole world. And that was when I pulled out my phone. I placed it gently on the table between us, flipping the screen toward her. The pictures glowed in the candlelight. Her. At his house. Her. Laughing with him. Leaning into his touch. Her face drained of color. I watched as she struggled to compose herself, her fingers tightening around the napkin in her lap. Her breathing hitched. For the first time, she looked afraid. Ethan, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't, I said softly, but with enough force that she froze. Her eyes darted around, as if searching for an escape. There was none. Tell me, I said, leaning back in my chair, completely calm. Tell me what you did yesterday. She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. I was at work. A small smile tugged at my lips. Try again. She blinked rapidly, her hands shaking slightly now. Ethan, I can explain. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. You always could. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Lying. Covering your tracks. Pretending. Her lower lip trembled. Please, just let me. I tapped the phone screen again, this time playing the short video I had taken. The final nail in her coffin. It was from earlier that day. Her car. His house. Him at the door, pulling her in. A kiss. The sound was low, but the image was clear. Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. And then? The best part. From behind me, I heard a chair scrape against the floor. Her lover had arrived. Eric. The other man. I had invited him, of course. Why should I be the only one to enjoy the show? Sophia's face completely collapsed when she saw him standing there. His own confusion was priceless, eyes darting between us, completely unaware that he had walked into the execution. Sophia opened her mouth to say something, anything, but I spoke first. Eric, I greeted, my tone light. Join us. We were just talking about you. His expression twisted into something between shock and panic. Sophia turned to me, horrified. Ethan, please. I took another sip of my wine. No, don't stop now. Go ahead. Tell both of us how much you love us. Silence. Delicious, damning silence. Eric clenched his jaw. What the hell is going on? I exhaled, setting my glass down, looking at both of them. Simple, I said. She told me she loved me. And I wanted you to hear it too. Sophia's breath came in short, desperate bursts. She knew. She knew there was no coming back from this. She turned to Eric, shaking her head. But he was already stepping back, already realizing what she was, already done with her. And that was the final victory. I stood, fixing my jacket, giving them one last look. Enjoy dinner, I murmured. It's the last thing you'll share. Then I walked away, leaving them to the wreckage they had built. And I didn't look back. Not once. I stepped out of the restaurant and into the crisp night air, my heartbeat steady, my breath even. I had imagined this moment for weeks, what it would feel like to finally expose Sophia, to rip the mask off her carefully constructed lie. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just a quiet emptiness where my love for her used to be. I didn't need to see what happened inside to know how it played out. Eric was probably demanding answers, realizing he wasn't her only secret. Sophia was likely crying, trying to salvage something, trying to spin another lie to save herself. But there was nothing left to save. I walked down the street, hands in my pockets, feeling the weight of my wedding ring pressing against my skin. I pulled it off without hesitation. Just a small, insignificant piece of metal. A symbol that meant nothing now. I tossed it into the nearest storm drain and didn't look back. 2 days passed before Sophia showed up at my door. I knew she would. I almost didn't answer. But a part of me, the part that wanted to see her broken, needed to. So I did. The moment I opened the door, I saw the damage. Her eyes were red and swollen, makeup smeared from too many tears. Her hair was messy, like she hadn't slept. She was still wearing that same black dress from dinner, wrinkled now, a pathetic reminder of the night everything fell apart. For a second, she just stood there, staring at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Like she was looking for the version of me who used to love her. But he was gone. Ethan, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I said nothing. She swallowed hard, stepping forward, her hands trembling. Please, just let me explain. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Explain. Her lips parted, but I didn't let her speak. You lied to me for months. Maybe years. My voice was calm, too calm. You had every chance to tell me the truth. Instead, you sat across from me every night, looked me in the eye, and pretended. She flinched. I took a step closer. You told me you loved me, Sophia. I let the words sink in. But you said the same thing to him, didn't you? She broke. A sob burst from her lips as she shook her head violently. No, Ethan, it wasn't like that. I didn't react. Then how was it? She was falling apart now, her shoulders trembling as she reached for me. I was lost. I didn't mean to hurt you. I stepped back. Cold. Detached. Done. She gasped, like the physical distance hurt more than anything I could say. I love you, she choked out. I never stopped loving you. I smiled. Finally, the truth. You loved me, I repeated, my voice quieter. But not enough. Silence. I saw it in her face then. The moment she realized I wasn't going to forgive her, that she had lost me. And just like that, the sobs stopped. The pleading stopped. Her expression hardened, her breathing uneven. She hated that she couldn't manipulate me. And that's when I saw her for who she truly was. Not my wife. Not my partner. Just a selfish woman who thought she could have everything until she had nothing. I reached for the door. Goodbye, Sophia. Her eyes widened. Ethan, please. Click. I closed the door. She pounded on it once. Twice. Then nothing. Just silence. I stood there for a long time, letting the weight of it settle in. Then, for the first time in months, I let out a breath. I was free. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.